Welcome back for part 17 of the Markidini Crochet Along. This week we'll be working blocks 65, 66, 67, and 68. So these will be worked on top of the blocks we did for parts 15 and 16. So you will want to count over 47 loops. So that will be partway over onto block 63. So 47 loops, and then count over 4 more and mark that next loop for the vertical line. 47 and mark 51. So you will join in back, pick up the loops all the way across. Once you make your connection, you'll have 49 loops on your hook to start block 65. There are 2 pages of charts for this block again. That first row after you've picked up will be a regular return pass, and then you're going to work 2 rows of the Tunisian reverse stitch. On the second row of that, so the return pass of row 3, you will want to watch for these 2 together stitches. So just a reminder, in our legend, when you see the right 2 together, we will chain first and then pull off 2 stitches. When we see the blue 2 together, we will work the 2 together first and then chain after that. So you can go ahead and work those first few rows. I will work a little bit on my swatch sample, and I want to jump ahead to some of these here to show you some of these stitches and how we work all of those to remind you of that. So I am going to work this forward pass of this last part of row 11, as it has most of our chart symbols present there. So I'll be starting with this stitch right here where we have the 2 together and work our way through there. There's a new symbol, this one here, so we're going to pick up our stitch in the return stitch. So I'll show you that when we get to that, and into the open space, we are familiar with that one. So working on row 11, I'm at the section of the row where we made the 2 together stitch. We have 2 chains in between the next 2 together stitch. So we want to pick up a loop in the 2 together, and then in that first chain space we will pick up in the open space like we're used to, but now we need to pick up another stitch in that space. So in the second chain here, we'll insert our hook into that chain to pick up a loop, and then work the 2 together. And then it's 5 sets of a purl stitch followed by a knit stitch. Purl, knit. That's 2, 3, 4, and 5. And we've reached the 2 together, so we'll pick up a loop there and into the chain space before making our connection. Then the return pass for row 11, we'll take off our border loop and the next stitch, make a chain, and work a 2 together. Then we take off the next 8. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Make our 2 together and a chain. Take off the next 2 stitches, and then it would be a chain and a 2 together. So it's just on the rows that have those 2 chain spaces back to back where we have the 2 together stitches with the chain, where we need to work into the chain to pick up that second loop. So just watch the chart carefully for that. You can go ahead and finish the 2 pages of chart for this block, ending on row 42, and make sure you do a bind off as well. Once you're finished block 65, you want to come down where we've made that second marker and join in behind, and then reaching over the bind off stitches of that horizontal line from last week, we will pick up the 4 loops and work our vertical line up the side of block 65. Don't bind off, and we'll continue to pick up the loops across the top of 65 to make the 3 rows of horizontal line. Do a bind off and fasten off. Then for block 66, you will want to count over 13 loops and place a marker, and count over to the 17th loop and place another marker. You will join in back and pick up the 13 loops across, make the connection for 15 loops on your hook for block 66. So for block 66, there are no new stitches on this block, so I'm just going to let you work your way through the 27 rows for this block, always being careful where the cables are and working them forward or return pass, as we have similarly through the rest of this crochet along. So you can go ahead and work block 66. You will bind off block 66. Then you will come down and join by our second marker, reaching over the bind off stitches of the horizontal line. We will pick up the 4 loops and work our vertical line along the edge of block 66 and do the bind off there as well. Then you will come over to the far edge. You want to count in to the 5th loop from the edge and make your connection behind for block 67, picking up the 30 loops across, making your connection for 32 loops on your hook. You will be working TSS, purl stitches, reverse stitches, and the star stitch. The link is provided in the pattern to remind you for the video for the star stitch if you have forgotten that. So again, you'll just follow along in the chart as we've worked previously, working the 12 rows and making your bind off row at the end of that one. You will join in the back behind block 67, picking up the 30 loops for the 3 rows of the horizontal line and bind off as well. This week, block 68, we will join in back of that horizontal line on top of block 67, pick up the 30 loops across, and then with the connection, you'll have 32 loops on your hook. You'll be working 12 rows again for block 68. And there is a new technique here for this yarn under 2 together stitch. So I will work a couple of rows with you, or a small part of the rows, to show you this stitch, and this new symbol here is for the yarn under stitch. So I'll help you with that in just a minute. Okay, so I'm going to be working part of row 2 forward pass with you to show you how this yarn under 2 together works, and just before the end of that row we have one more yarn under to do. So normally when we would do a TSS, we insert our loop, the yarn comes over the hook from the back to pull up a loop. So what we want to do with yarn under is similar to how we would work a purl stitch. We want that yarn to come to the front. So if I was doing a purl stitch, I would bring that yarn to the front, and then the yarn wraps again around to the back to the front again. We don't want that extra step of the purl stitch, we just want the yarn under to come first to count as an extra loop. So to do that, we need to hold that loop on the hook so it does not slip off, and then we're making a 2 together, so the hook goes under the next 2 loops, and then this is where we have to keep that yarn holding, otherwise it'll turn into a purl stitch. We yarn over regular way to pull the loop up. So we made a 2 together, but we still have the 2 loops on the hook from that yarn under. So yarn under, hold it with your finger, insert hook under the next 2 loops, holding that yarn under so the loop stays on the hook. Yarn under, hold it, 2 together, pull up a loop. Yarn under, hold it, 2 together, pull up a loop. Yarn under, hold it, 2 together, pull up a loop. Pull up a loop, and then we just ignore that white space. We skip that. We do one more. Oh, I need to work one more set here. Yarn under, 2 together, pull up a loop, and then one more yarn under, hold it before we make the connection. And then we just work the regular return pass. So yarn over. That first couple of loops you'll need to be careful. They can pull a little bit tight with that yarn under. We just work the regular return pass. And so on down the row. Now you will notice at the end of row 2 we did that extra yarn under. It will give us one more loop than we had on our hook. So with the connection you'll have 33 loops for row 2. But then you can see when we start row 3 we have this skip a stitch at the beginning. So instead of working this very first loop, we're going to skip it and then start with our yarn under 2 together. So the 2 together stitch now will fall in between our previous row 2 together. So we just skip that first loop and work our way down this row. And then at the end of this row we will do our yarn under first before we pick up that final loop. I forgot to draw up the loop. There we go. And then our connection. And then you should be back to the 32 loops on your hook for this row and making your regular return pass. So you will just alternate rows. You will always be skipping that first stitch from row 3 through to row 12, and then just being careful where you do that extra yarn over at the end. Sometimes you have a TSS after it, sometimes not, and that just alternates back and forth. So hopefully that works well for you. You'll be working the 12 rows and doing the bind off to finish this block. And then once you have completed block 68, you will come down to beside block 67, and on the far edge on top of the vertical line by block 65 you will join in back, pick up the 4 loops over top of, working over top of the bind off stitches, make your connection, and then work your vertical line up. So the 12 rows of 67, 3 more rows of the horizontal, and 12 more rows on block 68, and do the bind off. We will not be doing a horizontal line across the top, as that's going to be our border edge, and that completes part 17.